The night the sky split open, humanity was supposed to lose. That was what every alien war analyst believed. That was what the Dominion fleets believed as they darkened Earth's orbit with ships so massive they blocked out the stars. That was what every human watching the red streaks burn across the sky feared. But humans had always been dangerous when cornered. And on the edge of the Sahara Research Zone, far from the glowing cities and orbital defenses, one maintenance engineer named Orrin Hale was about to prove that no empire in the galaxy truly understood what it meant to be human. The first crash sounded like thunder tearing through metal. Orrin was inside the Desert Com Tower recalibrating a satellite relay when the shockwave hit. Sand burst through cracked windows. Lights flickered. His screen went dead. "Perfect timing," he muttered, brushing dust off the console. Another boom followed, closer this time. Something had fallen from orbit. Official channels had been clear. Civilians shelter. Military respond. Stay out of the way. Orrin had never been very good at staying out of the way. He grabbed his desert mask and emergency kit and stepped outside. In the distance, beyond the dunes, a column of smoke twisted into the night sky. Not military smoke. Too small. A pod. His heart pounded. Escape craft? Weapon? Scout drone? The Dominion were precise. They did not crash. Unless something had gone wrong. Orrin didn't report it. Instead, he took his sand crawler and drove toward the impact site. The pod was half buried in molten glass where desert sand had fused from heat. Its surface shimmered like liquid crystal, cracked but still glowing faint blue. Symbols pulsed across its hull. Not Dominion markings. Something else. The hatch hissed. Orrin froze. He had a wrench in one hand and a plasma cutter on his belt. Against a galactic fleet, that felt almost insulting. The hatch opened. Inside was not a weapon. Not a soldier. A child. Small. Fragile. Skin like silver blue glass. Large luminous eyes reflecting firelight. Wrapped in fabric that looked woven from starlight. The child looked up at him. And whispered something in a language that trembled like wind chimes. Orrin swallowed. This wasn't invasion. This was escape. Behind them, high in orbit, Dominion warships repositioned. Whatever this child was running from, it was bigger than Earth's war. The child tried to stand and collapsed. Orrin moved without thinking. Humans were like that. He lifted the child carefully. Light. Too light. Burning with fever. The pod began to spark. Self-destruct. Yeah, that figures, Orrin muttered. He ran. The explosion swallowed the pod in silent blue fire. By the time Dominion scanners locked onto the crash site, there was nothing left but glass and desert wind. And one human driving away with a secret that could rewrite the war. Back at the research outpost, Orrin sealed the doors and powered down all external signals. The global defense grid was overloaded. One small offline station wouldn't be noticed. He laid the child on a med table. The scanner glitched twice before stabilizing. Biology. Non-hostile. Neural activity. Advanced. Genetic markers. Royal designation. Orrin blinked. Royal? He didn't need translation software to understand the insignia embedded in the child's collar, a crest encoded in light. He accessed an old interstellar archive. And then he saw it. The sigil of the Ileri sovereignty. The Dominion's oldest enemy. The Ileri weren't conquerors. They were diplomats. Scientists. Builders of alliances. And according to Dominion broadcasts, they had been wiped out 3 cycles ago. Extinct. Except extinction did not usually come in the form of a terrified child who crash-landed on Earth. The child stirred. Their eyes opened again. This time, the whisper translated through the scanner. My mother, the Queen, they are hunting me. Orrin exhaled slowly. Of course they were. Because nothing simple ever fell out of the sky during an alien invasion. He should report this. He should contact Earth Command. He should hand the child over and let governments decide. Instead, he locked the station. All right, he said quietly. Looks like it's you and me. The child's small hand gripped his sleeve. Trust. That simple, dangerous thing. Hours later, Dominion patrol drones swept across the desert. Their signals probed for energy signatures. Orin rerouted power through underground cables built decades ago and powered the station using old hydrogen cells no modern scanner would detect. Humans prepared for disasters. We hid backups inside backups. The drones passed. The child slept. Orin studied the data he had quietly pulled from fragmented Dominion transmissions. The Ileri homeworld had not been destroyed. It had been occupied. The Queen was alive. And the Dominion was searching every neutral system for something they called the heir. Orin looked toward the sleeping child. Of course. He laughed softly in disbelief. Humanity is barely surviving its first alien war, he murmured. And somehow I end up babysitting galactic royalty. But something else stirred in him. A thought. The Dominion believed humans were primitive, fragmented, easy to intimidate. They didn't understand curiosity. They didn't understand stubborn compassion. They certainly didn't understand that humans did their most creative thinking when the odds were impossible. Orin began building a plan. If the Dominion wanted the child, they would scan Earth harder. If Earth Command learned the truth too early, politics would slow everything. So Orin chose the most human option available. He would outthink an empire. He would hide the heir. And then, when the time was right, he would turn the existence of one rescued child into the weapon that shattered Dominion control. The child opened their eyes again near dawn. This time, their voice was steadier. Why help me? Orin smiled tiredly. Because, he said, adjusting a damaged circuit board while outside alien warships blotted out Earth's sunrise, humans don't abandon kids. High above, a Dominion admiral received new data. Energy spike detected before pod destruction. Survivor probability, 3%. Search intensifying. They believed the air was weak. They believed Earth was fractured. They believed humanity would fold. They were wrong. And far beneath the desert sands, in a forgotten research station, the first spark of something dangerous began to grow. Not fear. Not surrender. But human defiance. And this was only the beginning. The Dominion believed they understood humanity. They believed humans were emotional, divided, and technologically inferior. They believed fear would fracture Earth faster than any weapon. They believed the heir of the Ileri could never be hidden on such a primitive world. And that belief would become their greatest mistake. By the second night, Dominion patrols had tripled. Massive triangular ships hovered in high orbit, releasing silver search drones that glided across continents like mechanical predators. News networks called it stability enforcement. Earth Command called it temporary compliance. Orin called it a countdown. Inside the buried research station, the child, who finally managed to communicate a clearer name, Lyri, sat beside a holographic interface, watching Earth's maps flicker. Lyri was not just royal. Lyri was brilliant. The fever had faded. The fear was still there, but behind it burned something stronger, purpose. You do not fight as one, Lyri observed softly, studying Earth's scattered military signals. Orin leaned back in his chair. That's kind of our thing. We argue first. Unite later. Lyri tilted their head. I do not understand this strategy. It's not strategy, Orin said with a half-smile. It's humanity. Outside, a Dominion broadcast pulsed across all frequencies. Citizens of Earth. We seek a fugitive. Surrender the Ileri heir and your planet will remain under protective occupation. Resist, and consequences will escalate. The message was calm, polite, terrifying. Lyri's hands trembled. They will not stop, the child whispered. They erased my world. Orin crouched beside them. Yeah, he said quietly. But here's the thing about humans. We don't like bullies. He stood and activated an old planetary network buried in forgotten systems. Long before first contact, humans had prepared for digital extinction-level events. Solar flares. AI collapse. Cyber war. They had built analog redundancies. Hard lines. Deep relays. Forgotten satellites powered by nuclear decay batteries. The Dominion were masters of advanced scanning. They were not prepared for outdated human stubbornness. Orin began transmitting coded signals, not to governments, not to militaries, but to civilian research hubs, underground engineers, retired programmers, amateur astronomers. People who solved problems because they were curious. Because they couldn't resist puzzles. Across Earth, old terminals flickered. An encrypted file opened. Inside it, Dominion ship frequency patterns. Drone blind spots. Energy fluctuation windows. And one line of text. They think we are divided. Prove them wrong. Orin did not sign his name. He didn't need to. Humans recognized a challenge. Within hours, something shifted. In Brazil, a university physics lab rerouted a telescope array to overload Dominion drone optics with harmless but blinding radiation pulses. In South Korea, hobbyist drone racers launched modified signal jammers disguised as atmospheric interference. In Nigeria, solar engineers redirected mirror farms to create false heat signatures in empty deserts. No official orders. No central command. Just millions of small acts of defiance. The Dominion noticed the disruption. They adjusted. But every adjustment revealed more of their system. Lyrie watched in amazement as human networks adapted in real time. You are not unified, Lyrie said slowly. Yet you move together. That's creativity, Orin replied. We don't need permission to solve problems. High above, Dominion Admiral Krell narrowed his eyes at cascading data anomalies. Primitive species, he muttered. Undisciplined. Yet his fleet's scanning efficiency had dropped by 11%. Then 15. Then 23. On the third night, Dominion forces escalated. A city in Eastern Europe lost power under orbital suppression beams. A warning. Earth's leaders panicked. Some demanded surrender. Some demanded retaliation. Division threatened to fracture everything. Lyrie felt it. They will turn your leaders against each other, the child said. They will promise safety. Orin stared at the global feed. Yeah, he said softly. That's how fear works. He turned to Lyrie. What would your mother do? The child straightened. For generations, the Illyri did not defeat enemies through force. We built alliances faster than wars could spread. Orin's eyes lit up. Then let's build one. He accessed Dominion communication frequencies again, but this time, not to jam. To broadcast. Using Lyrie's royal crest and vocal imprint, he transmitted a short, clear message on every open Dominion channel. It carried into orbit. It carried into occupied Illyri space. It carried into systems the Dominion thought silent. This is Lyrie of House Illyri, the child's voice echoed through space, steady despite youth. I am alive. Earth shelters me not for power, but for compassion. The Dominion hunts a child while claiming order. Let every occupied world see this truth. Admiral Krell froze. Unauthorized transmission. Origin, Earth surface. Impossible. Across distant systems, enslaved Illyri survivors heard the message. Across neutral territories, diplomats watched Dominion reactions carefully. The narrative shifted. Not an exterminated royal line. Not extinction. Resistance. On Earth, something else happened. The broadcast leaked to civilians. People who had been afraid now saw a child asking for nothing but safety. Public opinion ignited. Mass protests filled streets. Human leaders who had hesitated now faced something stronger than fear. Outrage. The Dominion could crush cities. But they could not easily crush an idea. Inside the desert station, alarms suddenly screamed. Dominion ground forces had triangulated an anomaly. They were coming. Fast. Lyrie looked up at Orin. You should surrender me, the child said. Your species will suffer less. Orin grabbed a toolkit and opened a hidden floor panel. Lyrie, he said firmly, humans don't trade kids for safety. He activated the station's final defense, a prototype signal inverter originally designed to redirect meteor fragments. Improvised. Unstable. Human. As Dominion dropships descended, Orin rerouted the inverter into a focused electromagnetic pulse tuned to Dominion armor frequencies. Risky. Unproven. Exactly the kind of idea humans tried when nothing else worked. The desert lit up. A pulse shot skyward. Dominion dropships stalled mid-air, systems scrambled by resonance feedback no Dominion engineer had predicted. Ships crashed into dunes instead of landing. Not destroyed. Disabled. Admiral Krell stared at damage reports in disbelief. Impossible, he whispered. But humans had done what they always did. They experimented. They failed. They adjusted. They tried again. Lyrie stared at Orin with awe. You fight like the Illyri once dreamed. Orin gave a tired grin. No, he said. We fight like humans. Outside, more Dominion ships repositioned. The Empire was not defeated. Not yet. But something had changed. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity was not reacting. Humanity was thinking ahead. And in orbit, Dominion commanders began to understand a terrifying truth. Earth was not a weak link. Earth was a variable. And variables were dangerous. The desert wind rose as disabled Dominion ships smoldered against golden sand. Orin looked at the horizon. This is going to get bigger, he said quietly. Lyrie nodded. Yes, the child replied. Now they will be afraid. And fear, when turned against an empire, could be far more powerful than any fleet. The Dominion had conquered dozens of systems. They had crushed rebellions before they even formed. They had erased civilizations from star maps and rewritten history as if it were nothing more than a document to edit. But they had never faced a species that treated impossibility like a puzzle. 3 days after the failed desert strike, the Dominion fleet tightened its grip on Earth. Orbital platforms aligned. Energy cannons powered up. Admiral Krell prepared a final demonstration of force that would end the human resistance in one overwhelming strike. He did not understand that humanity had already changed the battlefield. Not with bigger weapons. Not with superior ships. But with connection. Orin's anonymous broadcast had spread far beyond Earth. Illyri survivors, scattered across occupied space, began to organize quietly. Small cells that had once hidden in silence now carried hope. Other neutral species, watching the Dominion threaten a child publicly, began questioning alliances. The Dominion ruled through fear. Humans spread stories. And stories were contagious. Inside the desert station, Lyrie stood taller now. The child's fear had not vanished, but it had transformed into something fierce and focused. You have given us time, Lyrie said, watching star maps filled with blinking signals. Time is more powerful than weapons. Orin rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept much. Yeah, he replied. We're good at buying time. On Earth, something extraordinary was happening. Human scientists were studying fragments from the crashed Dominion ships in the desert. Engineers reverse-engineered energy harmonics from the pulse that had disabled the dropships. Coders analyzed Dominion fleet communications exposed during the chaos. Humanity did not just resist. Humanity learned. Within 72 hours, Earth had developed a planetary signal array, not to attack, but to disrupt coordination between Dominion ships. It was not elegant. It was not perfect. It was creative. And creativity terrified empires. Admiral Krell ordered the final strike. Orbital cannons charged. Energy gathered in a glow bright enough to be seen from Earth's surface. People looked up at the sky in fear. And then the human array activated. A chaotic symphony of frequencies blasted into orbit, millions of microsignals layered in unpredictable patterns. Amateur radio towers, research labs, satellites, even modified home transmitters joined the network. The Dominion fleet's formation faltered. Targeting systems glitched. Ships drifted out of sync. They had prepared for structured resistance. They had not prepared for organized chaos. The orbital cannons misfired, harmlessly dispersing energy into empty space. Across Earth, people watched in disbelief. It worked. Admiral Krell slammed his command console. Identify the central control node. There wasn't one. That was the point. Human resistance had no single brain to destroy. It was decentralized, adaptive, alive. Then a new signal appeared across every Dominion channel. Stronger than before. Clearer. Royal. The hologram that filled Dominion bridges and human screens alike showed a tall figure with silver-blue skin and a crown of floating light. Queen Illyri. Alive. Her presence carried the quiet authority of a civilization that had once led through wisdom, not fear. Dominion, she said calmly, you hunt my child across the stars. You threaten a young species for choosing compassion. You mistake restraint for weakness. Behind her image, ships appeared. Illyri ships. Hidden survivors who had been waiting for proof that hope still existed. Lyri stepped forward beside Orin in the desert station and activated a direct relay. Mother, the child said softly. The Queen's eyes warmed. My brave one. The Dominion fleet hesitated. 2 fronts now. And uncertainty spreading through neutral systems watching carefully. The Queen continued. Humanity sheltered my heir without treaty, without obligation, without fear. They acted not for gain, but for conscience. For that, the Illyri sovereignty recognizes Earth as an allied world. Across human cities, stunned silence turned into thunderous celebration. An alliance. Not through conquest. Not through negotiation. Through kindness. The Dominion had expected humans to surrender for survival. Instead, humans had gained interstellar allies. Admiral Krell calculated the probabilities. Extended conflict now meant war on multiple fronts. Rebellions already igniting. Political instability spreading. The Dominion thrived on certainty. This war had become uncertain. He made the only strategic decision left. Withdraw, he ordered quietly. Dominion ships broke formation. One by one, the massive vessels retreated from Earth's orbit. For the first time since the invasion began, the stars returned. Inside the desert station, Orin sank into a chair. Lyri laughed, a sound free of fear for the first time. Moments later, a beam of light descended outside the station. An Illyri diplomatic vessel landed softly on the sand. Orin stepped outside with Lyri beside him. The air shimmered as the Queen herself emerged. She was taller than any human, radiant yet gentle, her crown of light floating above her brow without touching. She approached slowly. Orin suddenly felt very small. You protected my child, the Queen said, her voice carrying both gratitude and power. You defied an empire. Orin rubbed the back of his neck. Honestly, he said, I just didn't want to abandon a kid. The Queen studied him carefully. In that choice, she said, lies the strength of your species. She lifted her hand. A symbol of living light formed in the air, the Illyri mark of honor, given only to those who changed the fate of civilizations. The symbol settled gently against Orin's chest, warm but weightless. He couldn't breathe for a moment. Not because of fear, but because of the realization. Humanity had not won through superior firepower. Not through domination. But through stubborn empathy. Through creativity under pressure. Through refusing to surrender compassion even when survival seemed uncertain. The Queen turned to address the world. Let it be known across the stars, she declared, that humanity stands not as subjects, nor as pawns, but as partners. Those who protect the innocent will never stand alone again. Across Earth, millions watched. Across distant systems, whispers began. The Dominion had retreated. The Illyri had returned. And humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage not as victims, but as equals. Lyri hugged Orin tightly. You said humans do not abandon children, the child said. Orin smiled. Yeah. He looked up at the open sky, now filled with possibility instead of warships. Turns out, he added softly, that makes us pretty dangerous. The story did not end there. Because creativity never ends. Because curiosity always asks what comes next. Because somewhere in the galaxy, empires were recalculating. And somewhere on Earth, humans were already inventing the next impossible solution. Humanity had faced the stars. And the stars had blinked first.